This is a moment that I have been excited about for months. This is the moment that I get to present the William Badger Award to Justice Walter Murphy. And it's not only a privilege to be able to present this award to Judge Murphy, but it's a great personal satisfaction for me to be able to do it. In 1985, I came from Massachusetts. I was a prosecutor in Massachusetts, and I moved up here to New Hampshire to prosecute homicide trials. And my very first trial was in front of this judge named Judge Walter Murphy. And, and Judge Murphy right away lets you know when you're in his courtroom who is in control, who is in charge, in a very nice but firm way. You know that he is paying attention to every single detail and he forgets nothing. And he probably to this day remembers that in my very first jury trial in the state of New Hampshire, in my opening to the jury, as I was new from Massachusetts, I told them that I was a prosecutor and I was proud to represent the people of the Commonwealth of New Hampshire. Judge Murphy has been really a mentor to me from the time that I met him back in 1986. Right away, when you're in his presence, you knew that this was a man of unquestioned integrity, great wisdom, tremendous humor. It was always a pleasure to appear in front of him, no matter whether you were winning the case or whether you were getting slapped around by the judge. It was just, he was a model of justice and always has been. And in my mind, when I picture a judge, the person that comes to my mind is Judge Walter Murphy. But this award isn't given to Judge Murphy because he's a wonderful judge. This award is given to someone who has made a significant impact towards abolition of the death penalty in New Hampshire. And Judge Murphy has done that. In 1991, the state brought capital murder charges against a man named Kenneth Johnson. Kenneth Johnson was accused of hiring two young men to kidnap and virtually terrorize his young pregnant wife, and murder her, which they did. That fell squarely within the capital murder charges. There was a government in place and state police in place that at that time supported capital punishment and had been wanting to and waiting for a case that would allow them to be tough on crime and to prosecute a capital murder. And this seemed like an obvious choice. And charges were brought, and Judge Murphy was the judge that was assigned to the case. There was a quirk in the case. There was a quirk in the law, and that is that right after these crimes were committed, and Kenneth Johnson and these two young men were charged with capital murder, the law changed. The law went from being one thing to being another, and that gave the defense an opportunity to raise some legal issues. And it's the way that Judge Murphy ruled on those legal issues that is step number one in us offering him this award tonight. What Judge Murphy ruled is that the state could not apply the new law because the new law came after the crime had been committed. And furthermore, the old law was unconstitutional. That was a huge decision. And it took the option of the death penalty off the table for the state. The state appealed it and went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, of course, upheld Judge Murphy, as they virtually always did. I had read the Supreme Court opinion many, many times, but I had never read Judge Murphy's decision in the Johnson case. And so I went to the Supreme Court library and I took a look at your decision, Judge Murphy. And I read it and I thought to myself, oh, vintage Murphy. If you're looking for eloquent flourishes, you're not finding it in that decision. If you're looking for exhortations to a higher order or great morality or human passion, you're not finding it in that decision. What you find in that decision is a strict adherence to the rule of law and reasoning, legal reasoning that, that simply cannot be argued with. And that is what persuaded the Supreme Court that he was right, and that's what probably saved the lives of those three people, and saved New Hampshire from going down a very bad path. Judge Murphy is, it was the quality of his reasoning that did it. But when I read the decision, one of the things that struck me is that, it didn't have to be that way. Even though the reasoning was impeccable, even though the law was correct, didn't have to be that way. Someone else could have ruled differently. Another judge could have said, you know what, I'm not going to be the one who, in the face of the passion of society against this crime and these individuals, I'm not going to be the one to rule that the death penalty is unconstitutional. I'm going to make a ruling the other way and let the Supreme Court reverse me if I'm wrong. So I recognize that not only did it take a fine mind, but it took conviction and courage to issue that decision. And I'm glad I read it, and I'm glad I know the man. When the study commission was formed, an obvious choice to chair that study commission was Judge Walter Murphy. It was an obvious choice because of his integrity, because he is well known as a person who is above all a model of civility. And if there were going to be passionate debate about such an issue that can certainly stir up passions, you wanted someone who could moderate that debate and be a civilizing force, and that's exactly what Judge Murphy did throughout the course of those hearings. There was no witness that came in to speak that was not given their full attention and their full opportunity to express themselves, and was not given all due respect. There were no divergent views that were not respected and given an opportunity to be aired. And whatever the outcome was, and it was a very close vote at the end of the day, it was virtually 50-50, although by a slim majority, a vote to retain it. Not that it would have made a difference one way or the other. The legislature still had to act. But be that as it may, it was because of the gravitas of this man, I think, that the commission was so well respected. There was an opportunity for anyone who sat on the commission. They issued a report, which is a fascinating read and can be found on the state website. And everyone who sat on the commission had an opportunity to write an individual statement. And I have read Judge Murphy's individual statement many times. It's subdued. It's very pragmatic. It takes a look at the arguments for deterrence and rejects them. It simply says that it does not make us safer. It is a pragmatic document, but it is much more than a pragmatic document. And when you look at the decision, you look at his statement closely and you parse it, you find two things that I think exemplify a part of Judge Murphy that you don't always get to see. And that is his concern for victims, for the people who appeared before him as a judge, and for the people that would be touched by homicide in this society. And he makes several references to the fact that these people, to what it's like to have your life put on hold for years and years during the appeals process and what it does to them, because these are the stories that were told to him and he heard and he listened to. And one of the things that Judge Murphy asked in his statement was, how can the state justify such an expense for the prosecution of one case while leaving so many cases unsolved for lack of sufficient resources? Does not the family of a victim of an unsolved murder deserve some consideration? In addition to references to what the victims go through in this system that just goes on and on forever and doesn't help people heal, he also let through a little glimmer of what I think is the core of this man when he closed his statement with a reference, with a quote from Justice Blackmun. But it's one of the only times that I heard Judge Murphy make reference to what I think is truly what sets him apart and what makes him such a model makes him such a model. And what he said is that I feel morally and intellectually obligated simply to concede that the death penalty experience has failed. This is a quote from Judge Blackmun. But for Judge Murphy to talk about morally and intellectually obligated to say that the death penalty experience has failed says something about the man himself and what was driving him, what his convictions were, what his passion was. We got a little bit of a glimmer. It is my joy to present the Badger Award to one of my personal heroes, Judge Murphy.
I've been told that a recipient of an award such as this should probably act very much like the guest of honor of an Irish wake. You should show up, not say too much, or do anything to detract from the festivities. With that in mind, I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone that was involved in the effort of the commission. It's an interesting document, and I think that if you expose yourself to it, you will see that the majority of 12 members of the commission who voted to retain the death penalty missed the point. They not only missed the point, they missed the evidence. They positively ignored the opinions of so many people, over 70 witnesses and presenters who appeared before the commission over a period of some 14 months. I thank the members of the commission, both the majority and the minority, for the attention to detail that they gave. However, I do find fault, again, with the majority, because I think that many of them had an agenda that perhaps interfered with their deciding the case dispassionately, which, of course, the whole idea of the commission was to consider all the arguments, both pro and con, dispassionately. They didn't do that. I'm surprised, as a matter of fact, today that tonight that Barbara mentioned that the memorandum, the 180-page report of the commission is on the state website, because I know that it was taken off the legislative website. We filed this report on December 1st, 2010, and by the time January 1st, 2011 came along, it was removed from the legislative website by the then House leadership. It kind of gives you an idea of what they thought of the report, if they bothered to read it, which I doubt. In any event, the report is available through the coalition website, and I think that if you read it, you will see what I'm talking about the various statements that were made during the course of the 14-month study. I'm sure that all of you have confronted or experienced the negative knee-jerk reaction that you get from people when you talk about disposing or repealing the death penalty. As a matter of fact, as an exercise, which I knew what the result would be anyway, I had breakfast with a group of friends recently, and I brought up the point of the issue of the death penalty. And everybody at the table said, hang them high, hang them. And not once did anybody suggest that there was anything wrong with the death penalty, except it costs too much. It takes too long. It doesn't work. Oh. Think of it. It's expensive. You know, I'm reminded, one of the things about the New Hampshire legislature has always been my experience, is one of the first questions they asked is, how much is this going to cost? And I'm reminded of a cartoon I once saw. I've never been able to find it again, but it was a cartoon showing a group of individual men sitting at a table, and they were all bewigged in their white wigs, and one of them standing up and saying, as a representative from the state of New Hampshire, I want to know how much this revolution is going to cost. As I told my friends at breakfast, you simply can't ignore the facts. It just doesn't work. It doesn't accomplish what those who wish to keep it seek to accomplish. It cannot be justified morally or practically or financially. My congratulations to the coalition and my thanks for this recognition, which I highly deserve. I extend my sincerest best wishes to the coalition and all of you here to spread the word, eliminate what has become an indefensible anachronism. Let us join the other 18 states who have rejected the death penalty and join the rest of the Western Hemisphere in condemning the practice of death. It just doesn't work, it doesn't make sense, and we can't live with it. Thank you very much.